In the last few years, I think a lot of primary schools have looked at the ways in which they respond to children who experience difficulties and those with disabilities. And of course, a lot of primary schools now have pupils with disabilities amongst their population that not so long ago probably wouldn't have been there at all. I suppose the trend began with the Warnock report. There was an inquiry looking at the way in which the school system responds to children experiencing difficulties. Traditionally, the school system tended to assume that something like 2% of children experience difficulties of one kind or another. What the Warnock report suggested was, no, it's far more children, and they estimated that it was something like 20%. In the years since then, I think many schools have started to see the issue not so much as meeting special needs as being about meeting individual needs. How do we provide for children as individuals within the school? I think the other thing that's been very notable in the last few years, how schools have developed their policies, is just as children vary from one to another, so do schools. And what we see is that schools vary very much in terms of their policies and the kind of responses that they find are appropriate as they attempt to meet special needs within their day-to-day working.
Almost at once, I heard a something at the door and a whine. A scratching at the door.
Castlecroft Primary School, we've got 207 children on roll at present, of which we've got 11 that are visually impaired. We have four main aims, I think, in the curriculum that we have to offer at Castlecroft. The first is that we should offer a broad and balanced curriculum, offering many different aspects of the primary curriculum to all the children. And following that on, the access to the curriculum should be there for all the children in the school, all aspects of the curriculum to all children. Thirdly, we try very hard to encourage independence, responsibility. Again, all the children are encouraged in those aspects. And fourthly, we encourage the children to have a great deal of respect for other people and, of course, for the environment.
Gavin, you've just printed the last line.
Yeah.
Could you read it back to me so that I could just check?
I shan't ever forget the horror of it.
Good. And what have you forgotten to do to the eyes?
Oh.
What is it?
The capitals.
You've forgotten the capitals. Yes, because you don't use capitals, do you, in normal brailing? But when it comes out on the printer, it looks better with capital letters. The children work in mixed ability groups, maths, English and science, and the work is geared to national curriculum levels. It's a lot easier with national curriculum to cope in group situations now because each group is working on a particular level and much easier to organise from my point of view and I think from the children's point of view. It's very much geared to individual children.
H-O-W space.
Each individual child must, as far as possible, get the support that they require. Obviously, we don't intend to support the children all the time because they have to develop their independence and they must learn from quite a young age to work on their own. But of course, resource staff are preparing work for the children to enable them to do exactly the same as their peers because they all have full access to national curriculum.
So you have got a copy?
There are certain lessons in school where the visually impaired child will work alongside a sighted partner. And this proves very successful.
No, it's hanging straight, but it's curvy on the right.
Hanging straight but curvy?
I disagree.
Oh.
I disagree. I disagree.
Well,
I think it's curvy.
you think it's
I think it's vertical a bit
well,
like that.
well, what can you do about that?
It's like that.
What can you do about it now?
Put more plastic on.
Our normal policy within school is that we don't withdraw any of the visually impaired children. But obviously mobility is something for which they do have to be withdrawn.
No, how do you know?
The mobility that the little ones have is within school, so that they're able to easily find their way around.
It's got carpet, good, and we know the staff room's got carpet, don't we? Yeah. And the corridor hasn't. It's got lino tiles, hasn't it? Go on then.
Carry on. Cover your left side as well as your right with that cane.
The older children go outside for mobility.
Find the grass, Gavin, and then locate your curb. Don't forget to pop up and listen.
The mobility that is given to them also extends to mobility in their home area.
Good.
We have the 11 children that are statemented as visually impaired children. But of course, we must take account of the fact that we have a number of other children with special educational needs. So if we were to take the Warnock 20%, we still have that aspect of school that we need to take into account in curriculum delivery. We feel that the national curriculum initially looked as though it could have been a problem to our children with special educational needs. But in actual fact, as with the mainstream children, we're taking the opportunity of the national curriculum to perhaps sharpen up curriculum delivery, assessment, recording, and so on. At Castlecroft, we feel very strongly about the principles and process of integrating special educational needs children into mainstream. The benefits to those children and to the mainstream children we feel are really quite immeasurable.
The basic paramount principle of the national curriculum, springing out of the Education Reform Act, is that it is an entitlement for all pupils. And the working party that I chaired, which produced a curriculum for all, which I think is now in all schools, or should be, reiterated that point, that it is a basic entitlement, and that's how we should see it. Of course, there may be circumstances in which it is in the child's best interest for some form of exemption, either temporary or on a longer term basis, either in part or whole. And that needs to be carefully considered if that is in the child's best interest, but not lightly to be undertaken, because you're then, by that token, in danger of taking away the entitlement. And the other possibility, of course, is much more frequently met, is to modify the curriculum in some ways.
It's about looking at the whole school policy, how the school organises itself, the relationships it creates, and probably most important of all, the curriculum. Special needs becomes a curriculum issue. How do we make the curriculum responsive to all children as individuals?
Woodlands Middle School is a purpose-built middle school completed in 1976. At the moment we have about 300 children on roll between ages 8 and 12 years, from different home backgrounds, different strengths, and it makes a very balanced sort of school to work within.
It's a cluster school, which means it's one of a number of schools in Warwickshire linked to a special school or core school, which provides outreach support to enable children with special educational needs to be integrated into mainstream schools.
We have an attachment of one full-time member of staff, and we can have sent to our school up to 10 children with a statemented moderate and in difficulty need, and they are called cluster provision pupils, and they work within our mainstream classes with the support of the cluster support teacher.
My responsibility for cluster children at the moment is for 8 children who've got statements of moderate learning difficulties. They're spread in 4 different classes throughout the school, and my responsibility is to provide the resources, to provide the support, to provide advice to the class teachers of those children. My role within a class takes a variety of modes. Sometimes, depending on the needs, my role is one of support. I'm working alongside the class teacher. Sometimes I take the lead and the class teacher is supporting me.
Paper was while you're putting some weight on it.
That's right. OK then, how strong is a tube made out of cartridge paper? Does the shape make any difference? Does the shape, the height, the diameter, does it make any difference at all? I don't know. We'll have to find it out.
They don't work that side. Let the groups stay here.
Anne Johnson and I have been planning together this term in a very special way that perhaps is quite new to the way we have been doing it in the past. In fact, it's only this year that we've been getting this support within the classroom because of the cluster input. The lesson was organised with mixed ability groups. The range of needs is quite diverse, and when Anne and I were thinking about the sort of activity that would be appropriate for all children to meet all needs, we had to think of one that matched all the pupils' different paces and styles of learning, etc. And so the task had to be a very open-ended task, whereby those children with learning difficulties could feel part of the activity, they could feel safe within that environment to carry it out and have some sense of achievement at the end of it. So the objectives for the children with the learning difficulties would have been very different for those, the more able children, in terms of one might look at the communication skills that certain children might have working in a group situation, or the cooperation aspect.
So how much is in there now?
280.
Right.
Oh, that's a big one. Go on, a little bit more.
As with all schools, we have a range of young people who, through their school life, either for part of it or for the whole of it, have a special educational need. These are, in some respects, seen as separate from our cluster support children, but their needs are met with in the same ways, the way in which we view them and the way in which we would seek support or provide support within our school. We have, as all schools should, a special needs coordinator.
My brief is for those 20% of children who are in mainstream schools, and to ensure that our policy with regard to special educational needs is implemented.
Obviously, the special needs coordinator and myself have to work very closely together because a lot of our concerns are common.
We meet regularly, we discuss the children, we discuss the assessment of children, we discuss the identifying of children with special educational needs. Yes, there is a tremendous overlap. And obviously we share our resources and ideas.
I thought a good extension for children with the learning difficulties would be to go around and look in the environment of where tubes are used.
Liaison with the classroom teachers is very difficult at times. We're all teaching full-time, and it tends to be at lunch times and after school. The actual method of recording for that would be very, visual. I think working in a collaborative way with another person can be very threatening. I know that as a class teacher myself, I did find that very difficult. But as you work together outside the classroom, you get to know each other better. So your relationship within the classroom is smoother. It's not a question of just another body being plonked in your classroom.
Same shape.
The topic that we've decided on is discovery, and I think the way we must start, as we usually do, is by brainstorming that subject.
We decided at the beginning of this academic year that the planning would involve the whole school. Now we're working together, we're working collaboratively, and when the first umbrella topics are decided, and then we do brainstorming sessions, my role is to look at what might be needed later on down the line. We've got an idea of what we're looking for in the children who've got learning difficulties right from the beginning. It's no good waiting until first thing on a Monday morning and saying, what can I do? We've got to have thought about that long before that.
That by putting them together, he said, yes, I've tessellated them, they will tessellate those triangles, that those, he's now decided, are the same triangles. We all started from the same point, which is something I try to do all the time, because I think you've got to start at a level where every child in the class is going to be confident at tackling the activity. and extend from that one point. The tessellate, well, what does tessellate mean?
The match.
Is that what it means? There are 2 cluster school children within that class, although they've got an official label as cluster school children. They're really just part of my class. There are 2 children in my class who've got needs as great as anybody else in that class. 180 plus 90 is?
200
270 plus 90? 360. Because I have those cluster children in my class, I've got to liaise closely with Anne so that she knows what's being planned, what's being done. And it's also sometimes useful because it's an activity she can take and use with other children in other classes. Every child in my class has individual needs. And if I don't see them as that, then I lose sight of what I'm doing with them. So I've got to talk to them. I've got to listen to them. I think that's perhaps far more important than talking to them.
Our whole school policy is based on the principle that a school is a place which helps children improve their knowledge, their experiences, their imagination, help towards moral values and judgments, and to enjoy things. We see all children as individuals, and we see their needs best met within mainstream schools, along with their peer group.
One of the ways in which many primary schools are responding to the issue of special educational needs is through an emphasis on collaboration. It can take many different forms, but I think collaboration in terms of the planning of the curriculum is one very important area that I see going on in many successful primary schools. And then, if it's possible, collaboration in the classroom itself, where teachers can work together alongside one another, sharing ideas, sharing expertise, making the classroom more flexible in terms of the ways in which it responds to children as individuals. Those are very practical ways in which special needs policies can be created. This idea of in-class support is a feature of some very interesting work that has been going on in Scottish schools.
Learning support in Scotland really dates from 1978. That was a year Her Majesty's Inspectors of Schools published a progress report dealing with the education of pupils with learning difficulties. That was the same year as Warnock, of course, and there were many similarities between the reports. There were 2 important differences, however. The Scottish report was based on a survey of schools, and they come up saying that 50%, not 20% of the children had significant difficulties, and that the curriculum and how it was presented was one of the main causes of these difficulties. Now, with figures like these, and with the emphasis fair and square in the curriculum, it's quite clear that learning difficulties has become a central concern in Scotland of teachers, schools, and regional authorities.
Bunarty Primary is a large primary school which caters for almost 600 children. It's an amalgamation of 2 smaller primary schools. As with any other primary school, we deal with children who cover a wide range of learning abilities, from the very able to those with great difficulties who are placed within our Department of Special Education.
The role of the department is to cater for children with moderate learning difficulties, but there's children within the department who could benefit from integration into mainstream classes, whether it be for maybe part of the day or a whole day.
Right, Robert, can you put the tail on there?
At the moment we have one little boy who we hope after Christmas will be integrated into mainstream full time.
No. Well, Robert's come to us from out with the region, and he's come from a special school. But we felt that this was the best placement for him for the time being. But we've now realised that he really should be probably, hopefully, back into mainstream primary. So we're trying to integrate him gradually to see how he gets on.
What colours are they? Red.
Red. And what about the car?
Green.
And the idea is to get him to work in this integrated day, to fit in the classroom situation. Not to stay with his teacher from the special unit, but to become part of the class.
Team teaching takes several different forms at Bonati.
The class are basically working in ability groups, although occasionally we put them together in mixed ability so that they get the benefits from each other and they can work with each other. One group are working on maths, they're doing circles, and another group are working with their learning support teacher who's giving them some help, particularly with reading the instructions and things like that. And I've got two groups who are working together on some language work based on their topic, which is the EEC, so we're looking at different European dishes, things that they can use.
So look at the other books, see if you can get some ideas of what they have, and remember to say, this is what it is, and this is the country it comes from.
Basically, I start with a major plan, which I sit down with at the start of a term, and I plan the things that I intend to cover for that term. And then every week I sit down and I do a weekly plan, which I break up into days, again, planning things so that I can put things together and make sure that I'm getting a balance through the week and that I'm seeing each group as often as possible and that I'm not omitting to see some people for any great length of time.
And just colour in all that bit and then that will be another shape.
When the learning support teacher is in the class, she's working cooperatively with the class teacher, and she could work with a wide range of children, not necessarily ones with the problems. I mean, every child at some point has a problem, and she's there to help as many as possible and work with different groups.
I've worked in Leeds for a couple of years before coming to Scotland, and though there are some similarities in the planning, I found that the planning that I've been doing here has been more detailed. The school here has asked that you plan for your ability groups in all areas of the curriculum, and I found previously that I'd only been asked to plan for ability groupings perhaps in maths and number areas and in language areas, whereas here there's been much more differentiation of things that you're going to do with different abilities within your class. The thing I found particularly helpful in this school is the fact that the resources are so well organised. I've been in a number of schools and never seen anything as impressive as the system that's in operation here. All the TV programmes and radio programmes are on videos and cassettes, and they're all listed down and cross-referenced to topics, themes and things, which means that you can easily find all sorts of things for your topic.
Right, now wait another 4 minutes, okay?
What you're seeing is not a class, but two classes working together on a kind of science circus or merry-go-round. That's well established. Not a thing. We don't force it.
It's going down.
We have 12 groups of children from the two classes. We have 12 trees, science experiments, and each session the group will work on one of these experiments. The following session they'll go on to another one. On top of the bottle, you're stopping more air getting in.
Well, we wanted to make sure that the groups would work well together, so we made the mixed ability groups with less able children working with more able children. We chose the experiments that were to do with the kind of science that we'd find in the home, because our topic is families and homes. So we worked out the groups first. Then we had to think, how are we going to work out how they're going to write it down, and so make sure they thought scientifically and thinking logically. So we decided on a worksheet format where they had to have the experiment followed by the apparatus, followed by the method, and eventually we hoped followed by the result.
Over the last 10 years, I think a lot of work has been done in Scotland to try and help teachers work together to meet special educational needs in the mainstream, to plan together and to produce the kind of broad and balanced curriculum to which all children are now entitled.
I think there's a danger that special needs is seen as being solely a matter of additional resources. Clearly, it is helpful to have some extra resources to provide support to individual teachers and children. But there's an awful lot that individual teachers can do as a result of looking at their own classroom practice.
This is Norbury Manor Junior School, which shares the same site as an infant school in the South London borough.
We have 185 pupils on roll, 2 of whom have statements under the Act. We also have a very wide range of ability in the school. Children who are well able at some time in the future probably to go on to university, and yet others who have differing special needs. Some are learning difficulties, some have associated behavioural difficulties, some of the behavioural difficulties are as a result of the learning difficulties. We have 2 form entry, 8 staff, and myself. This presents difficulties for the school because being the only person without class contact, that means we are unable to give the children with special needs support in the classroom. Most of the organisation has to happen away from the classroom, discussion time, how to meet the children's needs. The classes are quite small. We have between 20 and 25 in a class, which does help the teachers spend a reasonable amount of time with the children as individuals. We organise the classes into areas so that the children have a clear idea about where they will function within the classroom. The children are grouped mostly in mixed ability groupings. With the exception of mathematics, we decided that it was difficult to meet the wide-ranging needs of the pupils mathematically if they were working in mixed ability groups. The rest of the work is in mixed ability groups, and the children support each other as well as having the staff to support them. In order to operate a classroom like this, it has to be very well planned. The teachers plan long term, across the term, in all areas of the curriculum. Then, at the end of each week, there's a planning meeting between the parallel teachers where they plan in detail the learning outcomes for the following week and how they will arrange the groupings of children to best meet the needs of the children. These are planned on particular sheets as learning outcomes, and then there is a daily plan which is available to the children so that they know what they will be doing when and where.
I think the schools that I can think of that are most successful in responding to children as individuals share a number of common features. First of all, there is a clearly stated policy that reflects the philosophy of the school, and I think that's very important. Sometimes people talk about having a whole school approach. There is also, I think, good leadership in the school which supports teachers in trying to make the policy happen in their classrooms. There's an emphasis as well, I think, on collaboration and support throughout the schools, and that collaboration very often is reflected in teachers planning together in terms of how the curriculum is to be provided. And then finally, perhaps the most important thing, is something to do with attitudes. In the schools that I think of that are most successful, the teachers are confident and they work with a sense of optimism that what they will do will have an impact on the lives of the children that they work with.